Okay, so we've allowed the first coat of Pandomo to dry overnight. You can see the fine trowel marks that we've got from the first coat. As I said to you, we've got to try and get it as smooth as possible. These white areas that you see will be sanded off. That's the lime that's burning through the first substrate, and that's what creates the movement. So what's going to happen now is that Julian and Mohammed are going to first, before they put the second coat on, sand with an 80 grit sandpaper to take off these heavy lines over here. And once those are off, they'll proceed with moisturing the actual substrate. Then they'll apply the second coat. Now there are two ways, or styles, shall we say, of applying Pandomo. You get a very rough movement, or you get a very subtle movement. We've decided today to show you the more subtle movement. So I'll leave it over to you guys. It's going to be sanding, moisturizing, and then applying the final coats of stucco. All they're really doing with this first coat, they're not trying to get it perfect, you're just trying to take off the high spots here. That's really all you're doing.
As you can feel it.
Yeah, and it's creating a little bit of a key for you. So that 80 grit sandpaper, you can see actually if you come up really close here, there are fine scratches in here. Your second coat will cover that. So it's creating a key and taking away these high spots. So please make sure that all guys sanding have masks. Once again, this can be done with an orbital sander with the same 80 grit sandpaper on. You'll just find that with a hand you can get into areas where an orbital won't. But we would suggest if you're doing big walls, an orbital sander would probably be the better thing. But for the sake of this panel, orbital sanders are a bit of an overkill. Okay guys, thank you very much. Now what's going to happen is they're going to take off the dust, brush away the dust from the skirtings, apply moisture to the wall. This is a nice sanded keyed surface. What they're going to do now is they're going to apply some moisture to it, and they're going to start applying the final coat of Pandomo. Okay, so what they've done now is pure clean water. The nice thing about putting the water on too, it takes off that last little bit of dust that you didn't get. So it settles the whole substrate down, it evens the suction, and they can now apply the final coat of Pandomo. They can work a lot longer with it and get a nice, much better finish than if you just left it completely dry. Okay, we've now got the first coat nice and wet to apply our second coat. The only difference between the first and second coat is that when you apply your second coat, you're going to get a better spread rate than the first coat, because the second coat obviously doesn't have to fill up all the imperfections on the wall. So you'll find that they'll work it exactly the same manner, and they'll work it off now to the final smoothest finish possible that they can do. You'll see what's happening here as they're polishing. Because the water that they put on the first coat has allowed them to work it, and they're starting to get a very, very smooth finish. And that's what they're trying to get across the whole surface. So they'll keep on working it, and this is what's allowing them to actually work it as long as they can, because they wet the wall down. If they hadn't done that, this product would be almost dry by now, and you wouldn't be able to get this smooth finish. But over here is what we're trying to achieve on the whole area. So it's imperative that if you are going to get a very subtle movement, that you do wet your walls and you apply it and come back and polish as they're doing it now. As you can see now, Julian, this is the final coat.
That's correct, yes.
We've got some fine lines over here which you'll sand off tomorrow morning when it's dry. So we leave this thing for 6 to 8 hours to dry, and then we'll start the final procedure of waxing and giving it its final beautiful finish.
Yes.
Okay, Julian, we've completed the second coat of Pandomo, allowed it to dry overnight. Looking pretty good. These lines now, what we'll sand with is a
320 grit sandpaper, water sandpaper.
okay, and give it a light sand, take off all the high spots, and then 2 coats of wax. Now, once again, the sealing process for Pandomo, generally in most areas, is just 2 coats of conventional wall wax.
That's correct.
But if you wanted a more high wearing surface, we put on a coat of color retaining primer and then put the wax on top of that to get the luster, or 2 coats of water-based acrythane and then the wax on top of that, purely to serve as a barrier for water. So it will, this, for the sake of this demonstration, we'll put on 2 coats of wall wax. So it's over to you, Julian. Okay, Jill, so we've got this fine, sort of consistent, powdery finish over the top of the surface. What he's going to do now is just take his mutton cloth, take off the surface dust, and proceed immediately with your wall wax. Okay, you can see what's happening now. He's just taking this fine, fine residue of dust off the top there. That's the dusted surface, and this is where the dust's still sitting on the top of my hand over here. Over here, hardly anything. Okay, so what you can see is happening here is the wax is picking up all little nuances of the Pandomo. This is the first coat. It's sinking into the Pandomo. And as soon as he's finished this, he'll go back and do exactly the same. So this first coat is more of a sealer coat. The second coat he applies on top of this directly after he's finished this coat, and then he'll polish and buff it up with a new mutton cloth. Okay, so now what you can see, if you rub your hand over it, it's actually quite sticky because it's obviously still drying. You can see how beautiful it's starting to pick up all the nuances. This wax is still drying, and it'll slowly dry. In fact, it's almost dry over here. Hey, Jules, there it's still wet.
It's still wet, all these darker patches.
So you don't have to wait. We start straight away again, applying the final coat of wax, and then he'll polish it up with a clean mutton cloth. Okay, so Julian's completed putting his second coat of wax on. We've got a nice thick film on top of the Pandomo for your protection. You've noticed that he changes the rag all the time because you see that it really builds up on there, and if you just kept on applying it, you get this real greasy patch all over the wall. So we get rid of this. What I normally do with these is give them a good wash and hang them out on the washing line to dry, and you can use it again for putting wax on. The polishing rag is brand new, clean mutton cloth. You only use it for polishing. Obviously, if this is a large area, you'd be using orbital discs with a Lanswell buffing pad on. But for the sake of this, this is perfectly good. Okay, you can see what Julian's done there. This area here has been polished. All the last nuances, the veins and everything are really highlighted from the wax. Here it's still pretty dull, but the motion is just that circular motion to polish it up. He's always looking and seeing where he's missed spots, so it's very important to stand back and just see where you've missed. And it's just a matter of polishing and polishing. Okay, you can see that Julian has been very thorough in his polishing. He's taken a lot of time. He's really polished up to get this beautiful luster and look. Now, let's just recap the sealing process, Julian. The first thing that we did was sand it down with a 320 grit sandpaper.
Yes, we did.
Dusted off all the dust.
Yeah.
Then applied one coat of wall wax as a sort of sinking in first coat. Then immediately after we've completed that wall, we applied the second coat. And then immediately after applying the second coat, you then used a clean mutton cloth purely to polish it up and give it this beautiful sheen. And you'll notice there's hardly any wax on here compared to the initial coat that we put on, the application. So there's one cloth for applying the wax, yes, and another cloth for polishing the wax. Thanks very much, Julian. So this is Pandomo completed. We've watched the whole process go ahead. As we know, it comes in 16 standard colors. Now, the best places to use Pandomo are in your lounge, in general areas around the home. If you are going to use it in your bathroom, if you are going to use it in areas with high traffic, I suggest that you use the correct sealing system. What we've got on here was 2 coats of conventional wax. But if you were going to use this product in a bathroom, we'd use 1 coat of color retaining primer and 2 coats of water-based acrythane, either in a matte or a gloss. As I said, it comes in 16 standard colors, comes in a 20-liter tin. You can tint it to the color that you want, so it's not necessary to carry stock of each color on your floor. And that's about it with this beautiful product.